What's happening, people? What's happening, folks? We have to talk about a certain man, and that man is named Declan Rice. First of all, welcome back to the channel with your boy CJ from the Gunner's Corner. Make sure you like and subscribe and hype the video. I'm in a good mood, folks, as you guys may be able to tell with my tone of voice and the bright smile. We're in a great mood because Arsenal Football Club is one game away from lifting the Premier League crown. And now, at the time of recording, obviously, Bournemouth have yet to play Man City, so we could be Premier League champions by tonight, as well, as this is being recorded on Tuesday. But let's see how things go. But listen, we have to talk about that man, Declan Rice, because he is a serious problem. He is a serious problem, that man. I think one of the best things Arteta did in recent times was dropping him back into the number six position to screen the back four. I think that's what his best role is. I think that's truly what he's best at. I think we have to be honest and call it for what it is. Declan Rice is probably best in the number six position. Whilst he can do the box to box stuff and he can crash the box and be a more attacking midfielder and a more attacking eight, I think you truly do get the best out of him when he's playing that number six role. He just looks like a completely different player when he's playing in the number six. Um, one thing he's criticized for is his lack of ball progression, right? He doesn't necessarily, look to thread the eye of the needle or break the lines with a line breaking pass and just split your defense in half. Um, but what he does is it's his ability to just eat up the ground, right? He's a great ball carrier with his dribbling ability, first of all. And second of all, like I said, he just eats up the ground, right? It's kind of like what N'Golo Kante was doing for Leicester and Chelsea years ago. His ability to just get across the pitch, cover up space, cover holes that are left by his teammate. For example, we saw yesterday against Burnley, right? There was many occasions where, let's say Saliba was out of position or another defender was out of position, um, Declan Rice would go and fill and cover and stand in that hole, to cover up for a defender or a teammate who's just, happened to be out of position for one reason or another. We saw it in the first half. I forgot which Bournemouth player, sorry, not Bournemouth player. I forgot which Burnley player was in on goal. Um, this was in the first half, and I think the player ended up having a left-footed effort that went wide. But Declan Rice was there in the center back's position in the box to cover up, and he didn't, he didn't tackle, he didn't do anything to necessarily, contest the shot, but he just stood his ground. He was there and forced the player to have a shot, which obviously went wide in the end. But it's just the fact that the ability that Declan Rice has to just be there, his intelligence to just mop up the ground and mop up, any danger and just be in, like I said, just be in positions where his teammates probably should be. But if for one reason or another someone is out of position, Declan Rice is just always seems to be there to cover and to just make up that ground. And yet, in the instance that I'm referring to yesterday in the first half, he was in that center back slot covering for players out of position. That led to that striker or whoever it was having that shot that went just wide on his left foot. So we saw it a number of times throughout the game, as I said, just interceptions, right? His intercepting ability, his tackling ability. He's one of the best tacklers, if not the best tackler in the league. And as a defensive midfielder, I've said this before, just Rodri is the best six in terms of, all around game and what he does on the ball as well. But as a pure defensive midfield player, Declan Rice is second to none. I think he's the best in the world currently, especially obviously as N'Golo Kante has not retired, but he's on, on the decline and on the tail end of his career. Declan Rice is the best defensive number six in world football. If you need somebody to screen your back four and protect and like I said, just do the defensive side of things, Declan Rice is that guy. Rodri, again, he's good. He can do that side of the game. He's more well-rounded as a midfielder, and he can do that side of the game. But Rodri on the defensive end, he leans more on the tactical fouls, maybe, right? We've seen it in the past. Um, you know, Pulling players or getting away with some of the dark arts, again, the tactical fouls, because he doesn't necessarily have the pace and the athleticism that Declan Rice has to get across the ground and get across the ground quickly to make tackles, clean tackles, legal tackles, win the ball. Declan Rice tackles and he doesn't just tackle to clear it or tackle to, intercept. He tackles to maintain possession as well. Again, he'll tackle a certain way. Go watch his highlights, his clips in certain videos of Declan Rice. You'll see he tackles in a way where he manages to retrieve and retain the ball and keep the ball for us, and then he'll give it to somebody else, and we go again on the counter attack, or we go again in transition. It's just something that he's done throughout his whole career so far, and he's not even in his prime yet. He's going to be entering his prime shortly, but he has gears to go up. He's a player who he's mentioned himself who's always wanting to learn. He's always wanting to improve. He always wants to be better. And you can see it. You can tell with his mentality. I think he should be Arsenal captain. Personally, I think his mentality again is second to none. He doesn't shy away from the limelight. He takes on responsibility, as we saw in the free kicks famously against Real Madrid in the quarterfinals of the Champions League last season. And he's a man, yeah, the £100 million price tag that he had on his back didn't phase him. He came in and hit the ground running, and now you're looking at it, and now you're saying he's probably a bargain. We probably owe West Ham more money. He's just brilliant, man. And you see, him on the pitch. There's a lot of leaders who aren't vocal, like Odegaard, for example, is our captain currently, but he's not necessarily a super vocal leader. I think we've seen more of it this season in terms of him, trying to tell guys to get higher up the pitch when we're trying to press. He'll gesture with his arms to the crowd, to the players. But I think, Declan Rice is actually that shouting vocal leader, and he'll tell his own teammates off if he has to properly. And you can see it on the pitch. A lot of people think that he does the play acting on the pitch when he does things for the camera and stuff. But I think it's just a guy who wears his emotions on his sleeve. And the older school captains like that, Vieira's, Tony Adams, Roy Keane's, you like to see those kind of characters, right? Who wear their emotions on their sleeves. I think it's good for the game. I think it brings that authenticity to the game. And Declan Rice, I think, he's slowly become one of, if not my favorite player at the club. I made an argument that David Raya should be PFA Player of the Year. After watching him against Burnley yesterday, yes, I know it was just Burnley, but it's a pressure cooker game in a title race. There's other players who didn't have a good game who are big names, like your Eze's. Saka didn't necessarily have the greatest of games, although he got the assist for the one goal we scored. But Declan Rice, I think he understands. He knows what it means, and he can deal with the pressure, like I said. So whilst we just played Burnley at home yesterday, it was a high pressure game, and Declan Rice, I think, mopped up everything. Deservedly got man of the match, and he understands the importance of this, what it means for him and his legacy and his career, what it means to Arsenal Football Club. And yeah, his performance yesterday was stellar and was standout. Somebody who, again, like I said, really knows what this means and what's at stake here. How close we are. And like I said, just his ability to just that insurance policy. They should name an insurance company after Declan Rice, honestly, because he is just your insurance coverage every day of the week. That 100% guarantee insurance is Declan Rice. Like I said, you make a mistake, your teammates make a mistake, he's there to bail you out. He's always in the right defensive positions to cover. Yes, as we alluded to, Burnley doesn't have a lot of offensive threat and anything, necessarily to be worried about on the offense. So they didn't pose a serious threat that way. But, Declan Rice still needed to, you still have to go out and do the job. And he still had to be there in key moments. And he still had to, track back and cover in key moments in our defensive box. His recovery pace as well, his general pace, but recovery pace is another thing, right? When it looks like you have him beat, or you're running in on our goal, Declan Rice sometimes will just come out of nowhere, and the timing of his interceptions and his tackles again, once he's recovered and made up that ground, the engine on the guy, he barely misses a game. He's always fit and available for us. That's another thing that's important in terms of captaincy and in terms of what you need in a leader, somebody who's always on the pitch, because the best availability is availability, as they say, right? So you need a Declan Rice there in those situations, somebody that you can go to war with, and he's going to put his body on the line. He's not going to shy out of tackles. He's not going to, you know, um, fail to jump for a ball in the air, to put his head literally on the line in an aerial duel, in a ground duel, shoulder to shoulder, right? Like, all types of, he's a physical specimen as well. I think he's about 6'1", maybe. So he's got pace. He's got the athleticism, he's got the height, the strength, the leadership. And on the ball, he's good, man. He's good on the ball as well. I think people sleep on, just how tidy he is on the ball. You rarely see him give the ball away. I only recall one time maybe throughout the entire time he's been at Arsenal so far, which is just a 3-year sample size. But it was just the one game this season against Spurs in their ground where he tried to beat two guys in a dangerous position, and then Kolo Muani scored the goal. And he got robbed and nicked a possession there. So that was one of the only times I've seen of Declan Rice where he makes crucial errors that lead to goals. He doesn't often do that. He's very tidy on the ball. So whilst he's not, the Kevin De Bruyne, Fabregas, Mesut Ozil, forward-thinking, line-breaking midfield passer yet in his career, he's somebody who you can trust more often than not on the ball because, he doesn't really give it away. He doesn't really switch off. He's tight. Again, he's neat in possession, tight in possession. He keeps it for us. Um, and you can give it to him and you can trust him. And then another way that, again, a difference between Rodri and even a Thomas Partey in that sixth role versus Declan Rice in that sixth role is, you know, Thomas Partey and Roger are press resistant, and and the fact that they can find that pass through the lines when they're being pressed by one or two players, and they can find that gaping hole to play the ball through to get us up the pitch. Again, Declan Rice may not be able to do that with a pass, but he can do that with his dribbling ability. He's a very good dribbler. He can dribble out of tight spaces and he can dribble right through the midfield sometimes and just power pass two or three guys in midfield and get us up the pitch that way. You know what I mean? He brings different qualities to the game, and Declan Rice isn't the same Declan Rice at Arsenal than what he was at West Ham. He's improved from the Declan Rice that was at West Ham to the one that's at Arsenal now. You can see that. And that's what I mean about a guy who is hungry to succeed. He has the right mentality, and those are the best players in the world. Those are the ones, with the right mentality. Those are the ones that are going to succeed. There's a lot of players who are very talented, even more talented than Declan Rice, but their mentality isn't there. And Declan Rice's mentality, I think, is second to none, and that's what I think will propel him to the next level. Because that's a guy who's always willing to learn, and again, his ability, his technical ability from West Ham to Arsenal has improved drastically, and that's credit to the manager and the better players that he's playing with around him at the moment at Arsenal Football Club. That's no disrespect to West Ham, but it is what it is. He's improved in that sense. So who's to say that whilst he's not even fully in his prime yet, who's to say that he can't improve his passing ability as well, where he can be, that eye of the needle, line breaking passer, or just even be more clinical in front of goal and just get more goals and add goals to his game and add more assists to his game. We already know about him from dead ball situations and set pieces. That's something that's improved since his time at West Ham. So this is a player who has time and room in the game to grow. People are questioning him as there's talks about earlier on in the season about Ballon d'Or contention and all that, and what that would mean for Declan Rice, and he would love to have that tag one day. And a lot of people will downplay that, right? The haters will say, he's nowhere near, but don't sleep on his ability to improve. Don't sleep on his work ethic, his mentality. He can be a Ballon d'Or winner one day, in my opinion, and he can prove to be one of the best midfielders in the world in one day, in my opinion. Because, like I said, we've seen him go from strength to strength. We've seen him grow where other players have stayed stagnant in similar positions. We've seen him go past certain midfielders in the game currently, and go past certain players who were once ahead of him, and he's now propelled and elevated ahead of them just because of, like I said, the way his game has gone up since the move from West Ham to Arsenal. He's now, whilst he may not be a Ballon d'Or ready winner right now, or might not be the best midfielder in the world right now, he is one of. He certainly is one of, and he's getting up there. And like I said, as a straight defensive midfield player, there's nobody who can do the defensive midfield side of the game better than Declan Rice, and I stand on that. There's no other player you want me as a center back, right? And there's no other midfield player I want in my team to sit in front of a back four and screen me and protect my back line than Declan Rice. So, and again, like I said, all his attributes speak for themselves. The athleticism, the height, the pace, the strength, the tackling, the intercepting ability, the ability to win the ball back quickly and transition quickly as well. A player who doesn't rarely ever gets booked because he doesn't, like I said, and this is the difference between him and maybe a Rodri as well, right? Rodri will take the booking, but Declan Rice, because he has the timing, the pace, the athleticism, he rarely gets booked because he doesn't need, he doesn't get into tackles too late, or he doesn't get into fouls late, or he doesn't, you know what I mean? His tackles are always timed perfectly. His interceptions are always timed perfectly. He doesn't need to pick up bookings because he trusts in his ability to either stand up an opponent, get back in position, tackle, intercept. So I know, it's just, yeah, I mean, we're waxing lyrical about him at the moment, but I think it's deserved. And again, like I said, you watch a game yesterday against Burnley, and what was a very crunch game, a fire pressure cooker game, because it's a title race, and you're one game away now, two games at the time, now one game away from winning something you haven't won in 22 years. It's a pressure cooker environment, and again, just like in the Champions Leagues, man of the match in the Champions League semifinals, man of the match against Real Madrid last year in the Champions League quarterfinals. This is a big game and big moments player, and he rises to the occasion and doesn't shy away from it. And those are the guys that you want in your team and you want to go to war with every day of the week. And so, like I said, he deserves all the accolades. PFA Player of the Year, that's a whole other discussion. For me, like I said, I thought Arsenal's Player of the Year was maybe David Raya. I would have no beef with Declan Rice winning Arsenal's Player of the Year and also PFA Player of the Year. Yes, Bruno Fernandes has done wonderful things this season, but he's not playing in as much of a pressure environment as what Declan Rice is. Let's be honest about that. That's a conversation to have for sure. So I think, like I said, whilst, Declan Rice doesn't have the assists, right, the statistics that Bruno has, you have to watch football with your eyes sometimes. And the eye test will tell you that Declan Rice, who's playing in a team that's significantly under pressure to win a league, that haven't won in 20 something years, 22 years, you're playing in that type of environment is different than playing once a week for Man United when you've only played, I don't know what, 40 games a season, and your rest and recovery, and your ability to rest and recover is much better than what Declan Rice's is. Declan Rice is for the most part playing every 3 days. Late down the stretch in the business end of the season, almost every game is important, so he's not really getting a rest. So mental and physical fatigue is there, but he's still pushing through it. So there's a lot more riding on the games that he's playing, let's say, than what Bruno Fernandes has been playing. But not taking anything away from Bruno. But Declan Rice is, if you made the case the argument for why he should get Player of the Season, PFA Player of the Year, it would be justified because there's many reasons that you can use to back and support why Declan Rice deserves it. But he's again because he's not in his prime yet. He can go on Declan Rice to have a stellar career, and I think he will turn out to be one of the best midfielders in the game by the time he retires, one of the best midfielders the Premier League has ever seen by the time he retires. Um, and even in world football, so the footballing world, the Premier League better watch out. We're so lucky to have this guy. I'm so blessed and fortunate to say that Declan Rice is an Arsenal player. We hear players around the football, Bruno Fernandes, Pep Guardiola, players have come out and talked about, they wish Declan Rice went to their club because they know how massive of a player he is in this league and in world football. One of the best around at the moment, and I think he's gonna show it at the World Cup as well if he's not too fatigued. Hopefully, he comes back in one piece and he can get through it. But he's yeah, on the world stage he'll show it as well. He's got experience on the world stage. So far with England, going to a couple finals and playing in major tournaments and being England's main man as well in midfield, or one of them. Right, we've seen him wear the armband for England, so this is a big name in world football as a midfielder, Declan Rice. And like I said, he's only going to get better. So, the those and putting him in conversations for best midfielder along with the other ones in the world, your Vitinhas, your Pedris, and these guys, he'll make a case by the time his career is finished. And like I said, I'm excited to see what he has to do going forward. There's still trophies to win for Arsenal this season, but what's going to happen next season and beyond in football and for where Declan Rice's career is headed. So, um, but yeah, that's it from me, folks. I just wanted to say my piece on Deckers because he's our guy and our success is definitely dependent on him, or at least he's one of the players that will depend on for success, not just now but going forward. And the same with England as well. He'll be a key piece and key pillar to any success that Arsenal and or England will achieve. And yeah, what a player! We have to enjoy him while he's here and while he's fresh and in his approaching his prime. Because what a player he is for us. So. Ladies and gentlemen, like I said earlier, please subscribe to the video and sorry, subscribe to the channel. I'm so excited I can barely even talk. We're approaching that time, man. We're approaching that time. The Bournemouth City game is going to kick off soon, and yeah, we'll know what our fate is by the end of it. It's whether we're going to be champions by tonight or whether we'll be going again another day for the final day of the season. But yeah, like I said, like and subscribe, hype the video, subscribe to the channel, as we really, really appreciate it. There's a lot of good content coming out and continuing to come out here. So stay locked with us. It's an exciting time to be an Arsenal fan. And yeah, we'll be here. So this has been CJ from the Gunners Corner, and I'll love you and leave you. We'll talk soon. Up the Arsenal. Bye bye.